Hello everyone, today I'm going to present UFO, the ultimate QoS-Aware CPU core management for virtualized and oversubscription public clouds. My name is Yajuan Peng, and now I'm studying Shenzhen Institute of Advanced Technology. This work is completed with Shuang Chen with help of Zhao and Zhibin. Most data centers operate at very low resource utilization. This figure shows that the CPU utilization in the Azure cloud is less than 20% on average. Today, public clouds typically combine multi-tenancy, virtualization, and resource oversubscription to increase the resource efficiency. However, the effect is not ideal. It even causes latency-critical applications to violate QoS on a frequent basis. In the typical data center, there are mainly two types of applications. One is the best effort applications, such as MapReduce and graph analysis. These applications are throughput-oriented. Another is the latency-critical applications, such as web server and online maps. These applications are user-facing, so they are required with very low tail latency and have strict QoS constraint. The double scheduling problem leads to performance issues in the public cloud. Double scheduling means two levels schedule in virtualization. One is physical CPU to virtual CPU on the host OS, and another is virtual CPU to application guest threads in the guest OS. We test the performance degradation of LC applications and B applications under a CPU hour subscription ratio of 2. In this figure, performance ratio of 200 means the performance is half of non-hour subscript case. We found that LC applications suffer from our subscription, while B applications usually outperform the ideal. However, previous works on virtualization have focused on BE applications, and they have failed to address this issue. Another problem is that public cloud has no access to predict performance of users' application, but the previous work on LC collocation all relies on application-level input to get QoS-Aware resource management. It makes two assumptions. The application must monitor its own latency and inform to host OS. This is unrealistic and will cause information insecurity. In general, when optimizing resource scheduling in the public cloud, we need to focus on 3 points: virtualization, oversubscription, and QoS awareness. There are 3 challenges. First, LC applications have a serious performance degradation when meeting double scheduling virtualization. And secondly, LC applications have many interrupts, so it is necessary to solve the internal resourcing contention in a VM. Finally, the host scheduler is unaware of application-level performance to get the resource management, so a proxy of application tail latency is required. We proposed 3 levels of coordination to address these challenges. The first level is coordination between host OS and guest OS. To understand why previous studies don't work with LC, we need to characterize the differences between LC and B applications. The first thing is that LC applications are comprised of numerous sub-millisecond tasks, but the B applications typically consist of fewer and longer tasks. This leads to the problem that LC applications have more context switching overhead. As the figure shows, we experiment with Spark and 12 applications from the Parsec benchmark suite as B applications. The total scheduling frequency of LC applications is up to 1,000 times higher than B applications. So how do we fix this problem? Here we are going to do a test with 3 different mechanisms. The first one is a common management, where the physical CPUs are shared by all the VMs. We call it default. Previous works on LC collocation suggest isolation between LC applications, so we choose isolation as the second approach. Considering that the context switch overhead on the host OS is much greater than in guest OS, so we reduce the number of vCPUs to match the number of pCPUs, called host-aware isolation, as the third approach. We test under an oversubscription ratio of 2. The figure shows the VM's performance under 3 mechanisms. For each LC application, we experiment with increasing input load RPS as x-axis and record 99% latency of each RPS as y-axis. The dotted line represents QoS targets. We found that under QoS targets, isolation achieves higher load than default, and host-aware isolation further improves by up to 125% compared to isolation. This is because host-aware isolation could reduce host-side context switch and scheduling delay by up to 99%. What's more, the vmaxes and cache miss are both well optimized. In summary, for LC applications, the guest should be aware of the pCPU allocations on the host and dynamically adjust the number of vulnerable vCPUs. Now we have achieved host-guest coordination. The second level is coordination between vCPU threads and emulator threads. A QEMU process has two thread groups, vCPU threads and emulator threads. Emulator threads are responsible for handling interrupt for VM hardware emulation. LC applications are networked applications. The requests through network are handled by emulator threads. To see how emulator threads affect application performance, we isolate vCPU threads and emulator threads to test the CPU utilization separately. Two conclusions can be drawn from the results. First, CPU utilization and input load have a linear relationship in LC applications. And second, BE applications have almost no usage of emulator threads. Even Spark has only 2% usage on average. We found the two thread groups have different resource demands and interfere with each other when sharing calls, so we quantify the influence of emulator threads through experiments. Shared is the common default configuration. Isolated means using isolation between vCPU threads and emulator threads. We adopt the host-aware isolation to keep vCPU count the same as pCPU count in the meanwhile. Similarly, we record the tail latency of different RPS for LC applications. The result shows that, compared with shared, isolated achieves up to 50% higher RPS under the same pCPU count. The observations suggest that, first, CPU utilization of either vCPU or emulator threads is a great indicator of application's input load. And second, co-allocation of both vCPU and emulator threads should be dynamically adjusted based on input load. Therefore, we have achieved coordination between vCPU threads and emulator threads through isolation in a VM. We have now proposed two levels of coordination to optimize the performance of LC applications. How could we get the information of application level performance? We need the third level coordination between host core manager and applications. We test the mem cache with increasing input load under different CPU counts. The top left figure shows mem cache tail latency. The other three figures shows guest set, runtime, scheduling frequency, and runtime per schedule. From the figures, we can get many informations. First, guest set scheduling frequency is a concave curve with input load. It first increases and then decreases. And second, guest set scheduling frequency is a great indicator of application's tail latency. Comparing the left two figures, we find the peak point of each curve is also the point where application's tail latency starts to increase superlinearly. And third, guest set scheduling frequency can help get QoS-Aware co-management on the host OS. For example, when RPS is 250, the difference between 4 and 6 CPU is about 200%, and 20% between 6 and 8 CPU. Here we can define a threshold based on QoS requirement. If the delta SF is greater than threshold, this means the VM needs 2 more CPUs. Once we have a complete SF model, we can find the best co-management decisions by comparing guest set scheduling frequencies between different CPU counts. On the basis of the 3 levels coordination, we designed UFO. UFO is a feedback-based controller that dynamically manages allocation for virtualized public cloud, aiming to accommodate more VMs on a single host without violating application's QoS. The figure shows the resource pool of UFO. For vCPU pool, every VM has its own isolated group, and the core numbers are adjusted based on schedule frequency model. Emulator pool is shared by all the VMs, and it is assigned by the CPU utilization of emulator threads. This is UFO's main architecture. UFO has 3 components on the host OS and 2 on guest OS. First, the monitors in each VM trace scheduling frequency and CPU utilization for every second and report the data to the collector on the host OS. When the samples are enough, UFO begins to fit. If there comes a sample, UFO predictor will calculate the best co-management decision by comparing guest set scheduling frequency based on the feed model. The UFO enforcer expands or shrinks PCP counts of the VM due to the prediction. At the same time, host OS will inform guest OS the assignment of PCPUs, and the guest OS enforcer will online or offline vCPUs to match PCPU count. We evaluate memcache, nginx, and memcycle in different collocations. The parameters are shown in this table. Note that we enabled hyperthreading, so the call adjustment is always in step of 2. We choose default and dynamic ISO as the baselines. First, we evaluate the resource efficiency of UFO through constant load. The heat map shows collocation of 2 VMs, both running memcache. The x and y-axis represent the input load of memcache, and the values in the heat map denote that the minimum number of PCPUs to meet both VM QoS targets. Smaller value indicate higher resource efficiency. The brown cells with x indicates that 16 cores are still not enough to meet QoS targets. From the heat map, we can see UFO significantly outperforms default and dynamic ISO. The number of blue cells is 64 under UFO, meaning that UFO is able to satisfy 64% load combinations, where default and dynamic ISO can only achieve 19% and 16% respectively. For easier quantified comparison, for each PCPU count, we record the maximum aggregated load as mol that each core manager is able to sustain while meeting QoS of 2 VMs. For example, when PCPU count is 12, default can achieve 30% and 10% combination most, so the mol of default is 40%. Similarly, the mol of dynamic ISO is 50% and UFO is 100%. Our view in 6 different collocations. For the same number of PCPUs, UFO achieves an average of 27% higher more than dynamic ISO. On the other hand, for the same input load, UFO saves 22% CPUs than dynamic ISO on average. Then we evaluate how UFO reacts to different load fluctuation patterns through dynamic load. The figure shows the 3 VM collocation with different applications. We assume UFO has no fitting model in this experiment. We apply vCPU emulated isolation in 3 managers and keep PCPU counts the same. Cloud applications typically have diagonal load fluctuations. NGINX represents this pattern. The result shows UFO is capable of handling diagonal load changes. It reacts 1 second after any load change is detected, and performs better as more samples are collected. We test 2 types of bursts to evaluate UFO's responsiveness to bursty loads. One is sub-second load burst for MySQL, and another is burst with increasing duration for memcache. In sub-second load, the burst only lasts for 1 second, and UFO will react at the next second, where the burst has disappeared. This indicates that UFO is not able to react quickly enough to the burst of sub-second. As for memcache, the input load burst from 20% to 80%, but UFO can only increase 2 CPUs in a step, so UFO needs 2 steps to respond to the burst in 6 seconds. This shows that the responsiveness of UFO depends on the number of steps to adjust. Upon what the load increases, the longer the burst, the better UFO handles. Of course, default and dynamic ISO both have terrible performance in diverse loads for longer reaction time and more QoS violation. Finally, we evaluate the decomposition of UFO in a 16 CPU VM. We divide UFO into 2 parts as UFO vCPU and UFO emulator. UFO vCPU only keeps vCPU count match PCPU count, while UFO emulator only keeps isolation in a VM. We record the max achieved RPS of different bases under QoS. As the result shows, UFO vCPU achieves about 20% higher load on average than default, but UFO emulator will cause vCPU stacking. In this case, UFO vCPU does a good job of solving the double scheduling problem, so UFO combined achieves 70% higher load than default. In conclusion, we have presented UFO, a core manager for latency-critical applications in virtualized and oversubscription public clouds. UFO leverages host-guest coordination and inner VM co-isolation to push core management to the next level. And thank you for listening.